All right, class A, we need to take our notes over el pasado, the past. And when you are talking about something that happened in the past, you're going to have to ask yourself if you want to use the preterite to discuss it or the imperfect. And you already have your preterite notes, or you should, where you have a section in your notes that looks like this: time expressions commonly used with the preterite. And you already have yesterday, the day before yesterday, last night, this morning, last whatever, or ago. Those are really important, and you should already have those. But this information here in purple you need to add to this section, because these are other time expressions commonly used with a preterite. And if you see any of these time expressions, it's going to be a big fat clue that you should probably use the preterite. So within these notes, please neatly add that una vez or alguna vez is a way of saying one time. And la primera vez or la última vez is a way of saying either the first time or the last time. And that de repente or de pronto is a way of saying that something suddenly happened. And por fin and finalmente mean at last, in the end, or finally. And again, any of these time expressions here are a big fat clue that you should probably use the preterite, because right now what we're learning are basic guidelines to help you decide when to use which one. And these are big indicators of which ones to use. So make sure you have these here in purple added to this section of your notes. If you don't have these notes, then get them now. And then you also should have in your imperfect notes common expressions used with the imperfect. These I don't have anything to add to. They should be fairly complete as they are, but again, if you don't have this section, you need to add it. And speaking of adding things, we are going to be doing a side-by-side comparison of when to use each tense. So you will see that we're going to have a preterite side, we're going to have an imperfect side, which I'll reveal in a second, and you can choose whether you want to do this side by side with your paper facing the normal direction, or if you're like, I need more room to write, and you're going to turn it so that it's landscape instead of portrait orientation. So let's go through our reasons to use the preterite. You use the preterite when you have a completed past action. It's done and it's over with. Yesterday I rode my bike. Done and over with. But if you're saying yesterday when I was riding my bike, that would be the imperfect, because when I was riding isn't done yet. I'm going to say more. Certain examples are if you are saying what someone said or asked or decided, if you're talking about an event that interrupted something else, or if you're saying what happened instead. And maybe these will make more sense when we go over to the imperfect side in a minute, but those are examples of completed past actions. Keep in mind when we are going through this unit and doing assignments, you're going to have to decide on a tense and say why. I have a lot of students that try to say, oh, it's a past action, so that's why I chose the preterite, or that's why I chose the imperfect. That is not an acceptable reason. A past action can be either the preterite or the imperfect, but a completed past action, which I will refer to as CPA, would be the preterite. What else do we use the preterite for? If we're saying when something began or when something ended, you use the preterite. It started to rain, it stopped snowing. If you're saying that something happened one time or a specific number of times, you use the preterite. If you're saying something happened within a specific time frame, you use the preterite. Ooh, and this one is a biggie. Okay, if you remember the reasons to use the imperfect are just do it, and the I is for internal emotions and feelings, use the imperfect usually when you're talking about emotions and feelings. But if it's an emotional reaction or it's an emotional change at a specific time, preterite. If you're like, Profe, wow, there's way too many rules and things going on here and exceptions. There are, but keep in mind that I'll be giving you these guidelines. We'll be talking about them a lot, and I'll be giving you plenty of examples. So you just need to be a focused sponge and try to absorb this information and actually think about it. Okay. One way that helps students to decide if they want to use the preterite or the imperfect is to think about the story as if it were a play. And if it's what you can see happen, not just see, but see happen, it would be the preterite. if you can see something start or end, the preterite. It is the action in the play. The preterite will be the actions in the play, not what was already going on when the curtain goes up, because that would equal setting the scene, which would equal the imperfect. Again, we will go over this more in class, but if it were a play and it's the main actions that you can see happen, then you're going to use the preterite. All right, let's go to the other side and see what the imperfect is used to talk about. As you know, the imperfect is used for ongoing or habitual past actions. So if it's something that someone used to do and it was a habit, the imperfect. If it's ongoing, that means it's not completed. Use the imperfect. And we know our reasons for like do it, D-U-W-I-T. We're just going to elaborate on them a little bit more. The D is for description. So that would be that anything that helps to set the scene. If you're talking about the season, the weather, someone's age, location, identification, saying who someone was or their name or something like that. That's description in the past. That's ongoing. If we were in class together, it'd be that thing where I wave my arms in like a wave motion, because those things are ongoing. If you're talking about conditions, if you're saying there was something, you would use the imperfect, like there was a sale or there was a line of people. In the past, we did the preterite versus the imperfect in a clothing chapter, so there's a lot of shopping terms I have in these notes. If you're saying how much something costs or the price of something or any of these things here, you would use the imperfect because those are ongoing descriptive things. You know that we use the imperfect to say how things used to be or what someone used to do. You also know we use the imperfect to say what was happening or what people were doing. And some more examples of these. If you ever see the word mientras, 99% of the time, because mientras means while, at least one of the verbs in that sentence will go in the imperfect. So this is another one of those big factors. If you see mientras, which means while, at least one of the verbs will go in the imperfect. If you're saying what was happening, that will be the imperfect. But keep in mind, if you're saying what was happening when something interrupted, the interrupted part goes in the preterite, as we say over here. An event that interrupted is the preterite. But what was happening is the imperfect. And also under this column, if you want to say what was going to happen, ir plus a plus infinitive, you use that in the imperfect to say what was going to happen. So, iba a comer, I was going to eat. And if you want to say what happened instead, again, that goes over here. That part would be the preterite. I was going to eat, but my friends came over instead, so I didn't. That part would be in the preterite. If you're discussing someone's internal emotions or feelings, the imperfect, so if you're ever saying what someone liked or disliked or wanted, chances are that will go in the imperfect. And don't forget, we use the imperfect to tell time in the past, and we use ser to tell time. A lot of times students want to fight against this one because if you're saying it was 3 o'clock, that's a very specific time frame. You're saying what time it was. It doesn't matter. If you're saying what time it was in the past, use ser because that's like a description. So here are general guidelines to decide if you want to use the preterite or the imperfect, and you will be consulting these notes on a regular basis as we go through this lesson. So thank you for taking these very important preterite versus imperfect notes.